Welcome to Fandom Post Radio. I am Kestrel, and in this episode, we're finally talking about a tiny little series called One Piece. And for this occasion, we have a very special lineup. So first up, probably our biggest One Piece fan. He also writes about the series and many others for Crunchyroll, as well as the Fandom Post. It's Skyler.
Hey.
And we also have our newest podcast regular, who just caught up on One Piece yesterday, Brandon.
Hello, hello.
You're a hero. I can't wait to hear about that. And it wouldn't be a One Piece podcast without the One Piece podcast. So I am excited and ready to be joined by the founders and hosts. Since the beginning of the podcast, we have Zach Logan.
Hi, nice to be here.
And we have Ed.
Hey, how's it going? Been a big fan of the Fandom Post since before it was the Fandom Post.
Yeah.
Wow.
Back when Chris Beveridge ran the site as anime on DVD.
Yep. We go way back to Anime on DVD started the same year as Anime News Network. And then I joined when it was Mania, which was a few years in between.
Oh, yeah.
That dark black with neon website layout.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think I just hit my 10 years with the Fandom Post, actually writing for them a few days ago.
Congrats.
Nice.
So, yeah, let's get started talking about One Piece. So, guys from the One Piece podcast, you've certainly told your story many times, but I feel like we got to start with how did everyone get into the series, their whole history with it, what brought them to this point. So, I guess... can everyone just drop the year that they got into One Piece in the Discord, and we can go in chronological order?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I'm a late bloomer, I think. Or maybe it was...
That was a lot of influence from me.
Yeah,
I made it happen.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna count me watching it on 4Kids or anything, so I'm gonna give you one of these.
Nice. Great range there. I'm glad you joined for this episode. Okay, cool. So, yeah. I was I ran into Steve at the Animationist Film Festival last weekend, and he was asking, how long I was into the series, because I was like, hey, I'm the guy who does the podcast that I'm going to have Zach on. And yeah, I think we both started around the same time, which was when One Piece first came to the US, which was the end of 2002 now. So yeah, almost 20 years. And it got me thinking about how my life has intersected with One Piece every 5 years. So I'm 30, so I was born 1992. 5 years later, One Piece was born, 1997. 5 years later, 2002, One Piece comes to the US. I see Shonen Jump. I'm a big Dragon Ball fan. I was into Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time. So I see these new comics, and I'm immediately taken by One Piece. And I did watch every episode of the 4Kids dub as it aired. It hurt. But I really started caring about the anime in 2007, which was 5 years after I got into One Piece, because that's when Funimation took over the dub. I was so excited by this that I joined a little forum called Toon Zone. Yeah, and I made my account pretty much just to talk about that dub, but I ended up becoming a regular of several boards moderated by one Zach Logan. And then, so through that, I had heard about the One Piece podcast when it started because, you were on there, and I was still sticking to the official releases. So it was 2012 that I actually started listening to you guys weekly, because that was the year that Shonen Jump Alpha launched, or Weekly Shonen Jump Alpha. And it was actually at the end of that year, I think, that the anime, which was being simulcast, caught up to where Shonen Jump Alpha started, because there was like the gap in between where the magazine stopped and where the site started.
Right.
Yeah, so that was when I actually started reading weekly, and when I started listening to you guys. And I also started writing for the Fandom Post that year, as I mentioned. So then 5 years after that, in 2017, a few of us at the Fandom Post started this podcast. And I had a few major influences for it, mainly Ancast or Ancast, the One Piece podcast, and Kanzenshu podcast.
Takes me back.
Yeah.
Those the other two are the big.
Yeah, but the last one is a podcast I started listening to. 2005 Thanksgiving break.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was the first podcast I ever listened to.
Nice. Yeah, so, those podcasts made me want to do a podcast for a while, and so that's what kind of brought us into making a podcast for the site. And I always wanted to, have an episode just dedicated to One Piece. Like, I had an episode dedicated to Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is my favorite anime, because...
Good choice.
Thanks. A lot of the people on the podcast had watched it, or I had gotten them to watch it. For One Piece, most of the co-hosts didn't read or watch it, or they weren't caught up. So it took us 5 years of making this podcast to finally get around to doing this episode. So that's my history. And next would be, let's see, Ed or Skyler. We can alternate between Fandom Post and One Piece podcast people. So Ed, you can go next.
So I was big into anime around the late 90s when DBZ was airing on Toonami. So I would have been in junior high around that time, watching videos off Planet Namek, going to Vegito EX's homepage. And then I sort of lost interest in that. I was watching Pokemon as well at the time. And so I went to high school and I kind of stopped with that. I didn't watch as much anime in high school. Yeah, so Zach and I became friends in college, and he sort of reintroduced me to anime. He had been more in that scene online with like the Toonami stuff that he was doing, and showing me like Adult Swim, like anime as much. I hadn't been watching as much, so when I learned about Samurai Champloo and like other stuff and Cowboy Bebop, and revisiting that, and then I got to revisiting Dragon Ball Z and watched through like 400 episodes of that, and. So this is getting towards the end of my freshman year of college, and I took this course in my second semester. It was supposed to be like a research and writing course. We were just supposed to learn how to use the library, cite sources, and write a persuasive research paper.
So not the Dewey Decimal System? None of that?
Well, I mean, actually, yeah, we did do a bit of that. We did microfiche anyway.
Oh, yeah. I did that in law school.
So it could be about anything. There was all sorts of, these were little classes, and they were set up around topics, and I got comics and sequential art, and I was into like Alan Moore and Frank Miller and stuff, real basic stuff for an 18-year-old guy at the time. But there was this half Japanese girl who had grown up in Japan, and so I ended up writing about like V for Vendetta for my research paper, but she wrote about One Piece, and she introduced me to it. And so when I ran out of Dragon Ball Z to revisit, I started watching the One Piece anime in Japanese, unfortunately, with fan subs. So I never had exposure to the 4Kids dub. And then when I caught up, I was in love with that. I basically binged that over the course of like, I don't know, a month and a half or a month in like the summer after my freshman year, and caught up to where the anime ended at the time, and that would have been like early Enies Lobby, and caught up to like where the Zoro and Kaku fight was, and I've pretty much been following week to week ever since, and pestered Zach as soon as I got back to college to get him to read it, and it took a couple of years, but I got him.
A little over a year, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, and we were big into the Lost fandom at the time. This is around the time we would have been graduating our last year, and Lost podcasting was a big thing in the Lost community. So combining that with my previous interest in like anime podcasting, and Zach really took the initiative in starting the podcast, and I was along for the ride, and I've been there from the beginning. So that's it's really sort of defined a lot of my social life post college.
Right.
Same.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Skyler.
Yeah, that's my story.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Skyler, you want to go next?
Sure. So I first got into One Piece around 2005 with the 4Kids dub on Toonami. Back then I was really into watching Naruto and the like on Toonami, so I naturally picked it up. I enjoyed it because I was young enough not to realize that the 4Kids dub was awful. Well, and dropped off for a few years. Picked it back up when I heard about the Funimation dub. That would have been maybe 2010-ish. It was during the period where the Funimation dub had gone through the end of Skypiea. And there was a while before they released new ones. So I binged it, fell in love there. And started editing on the One Piece wiki a lot.
Oh, nice.
Where I was spoiled for a lot of things. And then eventually I kept up with the dub, which I still keep up with today. And also started watching bits of it through bad fan subs. And then I started watching it weekly. And when the anime, the sub was around on the end of Fishman Island. And picked up the manga during early Punk Hazard. And been reading that weekly ever since. Dropped off the anime for a while during Dressrosa because it really slowed down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Then picked it up for Wano because Wano.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. One Piece, for all the anime's jankiness, still my favorite anime. Because the writing from the manga just shines through so much. And yeah, that's my story. I'm, I think, the youngest one here. So I don't go back quite as far. I'm 27.
Potentially. Okay, yeah. You just beat me out.
Yeah, actually, I mentioned that I started reading weekly in late 2012. It was the very beginning of Punk Hazard for me as well, so we might have started reading weekly at the exact same time.
Yeah. I started maybe like 10 chapters in, give or take.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And haven't missed a chapter since.
Yeah. All right, Zach, how about you?
Me. So I was born 10 years before One Piece, not 5. Kestrel, what have you said your name on Toon Zone before?
So since I'm so good at coming up with screen names, and I wanted to talk about the Funimation dub of One Piece, I called myself Funny OP.
Oh, I think I remember you. I think. Yeah, so no, I mean, where my stories overlap with a lot of the previous stories in that I was a moderator on Toon Zone, which was a combination of fun and sometimes scarring experiences of moderating a forum in the mid-aughts. Mm-hmm. I had heard of One Piece. One Piece had constantly been in the background for me, and I was never against watching it. It is just, and Ed could attest, extremely difficult for me to start something new. I don't know if it's just my personality that I can't, to dive into a new thing is just a very difficult thing. But once I get into that thing, I don't shut up about it ever.
You make a podcast about it.
for 13 years. Yeah. Exactly. So it's usually worth the effort to try and get me into something. It just takes a while. So
it's also that good. I wouldn't endorse something I didn't believe in.
No, it's not that I don't trust. It's, trusted people could tell me, but I'll just be like, I don't have time. I don't feel like it. I'd rather watch this for the 30th time. And eventually I'll be like, oh, they were right. And of course they were right. So yeah, One Piece was kind of in the background. I was a huge Toonami fan from 2000 to 2010, maybe, I don't know, or 2007, before it switched to the weird Tom in the, I think, 07, 06, or 05, I don't know, somewhere around there. So I had stopped watching it once it moved to Saturday nights because I was in college or late high school, and I tried to go out on Saturday nights sometimes, so I missed out on that run of the 4Kids dub. But I remember Ed specifically when she came in, our other friend, with the first volume of One Piece and said, you have to read it. and then you did, and it took me another year and a half or something like that.
Yeah, I read the one volume. I didn't get back into it until like the next 6 months later, and like in summertime.
So I had I think so. This is my junior year, I think. I had an awful roommate, and to escape that whole situation, I binged One Piece. I remember over Thanksgiving weekend just watching the entire Alabasta arc, and for me, yeah, when I get immersed into something, I really get immersed into it. I actually made the One Piece podcast website on a Blogspot account, which I don't know if that still exists somewhere. Back in like 2008 or 7, just to, stake my plan to say, hey, I'm going to do this. And I didn't end up doing it until we left college, and we were taking.
Well, you want to like. Yeah, what
Yeah.
happened? The
so-
podcast happened was kind of it's kind
story.
of a funny story to like, because One Piece was like the first anime simulcast.
Yeah. So back in 2009, we had graduated. I was going to pick up a car from Florida. We driving up 95, and we stopped in Raleigh, and that is when the Funimation simulcast of like the very first simulcast of One Piece, probably one of their I think it was their very first simulcast, right, Ed?
I think so. Yeah.
It got stolen because they didn't put it behind like an actual domain name.
Yeah.
Or they just typed in episode whatever, it was like 40 something. And
They figured out what
that.
the URL would be and accessed
exactly.
it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then
I downloaded
spread
it from the
And so
Yeah,
I was
didn't they pause the simulcast for a while because of that?
few months. Yeah.
They did, yeah. But I, looking at that moment, I'm like, oh, this is the moment we're going to start the podcast, because this is actually like this is a big deal. We want to, and our goal with the show has always been, let's make One Piece more popular. Let's make One Piece, let's share the love of One Piece to everyone. And also at that time, I can't emphasize how I probably was its lowest point in the fandom. I feel like no one was talking about it. We went to conventions, I think in like 2009, 2010, and you'd find like one or two people with a Luffy hat or something. But at that time,
a toddler dressed as Chopper.
yes, I do
One
remember
of them.
that. Yeah. And so it really became like a mission statement is, let's find the One Piece fans, reach out to them, be a voice for them to help spread the word about this little tiny series that no one's ever heard of. And it is insane to think of where it's come in the last 13 years since we started. And that story could take a couple hours, so I'll leave it there.
Don't worry, I have a question about that exactly.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Isn't it weird that we can't even say the Funimation dub anymore?
It's Crunchyroll dub now.
Yeah,
I buy the Blu-rays, and the bunch of Funimation is not on the spine anymore.
Yep.
The Blu-rays.
It's wild.
We've been that like really, I feel like it's gonna date us when we mention Funimation in like 5 years, and kids are gonna be like, "What the hell is a Funimation?"
Right.
Imagine mentioning 4 Kids in 5 years.
Well, that's better. I think that someone looks at you weird if you mention
True.
4 Kids.
Yeah.
But also that rap has just crept into the culture in a way that I think it's, unfortunately, 4 Kids is probably everlasting in the fandom.
Yeah.
I
That rap
admittedly
is, like-
still sing it to myself. So
Yeah, it's like simultaneously a good, bad, and so bad it's good.
100%. Yep.
Mostly the latter.
Yeah.
And didn't they initially have a dub version of We Are? I remember hearing 4 Kids initially screened that somewhere.
oh wow.
It was at I think it had been like a TV syndication, like
I think
Nat-
Alex
Nat-
saw it
Nat
at a
something like that?
convention,
Yeah.
or maybe he heard about it. There was someone on our podcast who had seen the 4 Kids version of We Are. We also
there are also
you could listen-
test dubs created around that time as well.
Yeah, I was about to say. If you listen to when we went to Dallas back in 2015, and and we got to see some of the test dubs that were done by Funimation and by Ocean, I think.
It was a couple.
The
There was
Canadian
one
dub.
Funimation, and 2 Canadian productions. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Eric
And-
Vale played Luffy in the Funimation.
in the
test dub.
Funimation one. They
Yeah.
were
That's just weird. to
they were
imagine.
they were bizarre, especially since I think most of the test dub episodes were a piece arc episodes, which
The
seems like an
best.
odd choice.
Yeah, 2 of them
Um,
were. One was Gaimon.
One was
Amazing.
Gaimon, right? I forgot
All the
about
things
that.
to
Oh my
pick.
god. Yeah, it was
You know, the
bizarre.
fans wanted to hear Gaimon's voice.
But wow, it was really interesting and funny and weird to just hear like where they could have gone with the series before 4Kids actually usurped it. It wouldn't have been great. It definitely wouldn't have been as good as Funimation's dub ended up being,
Mhm.
but it definitely would have been better, I think. And you could back me up or not. It definitely would have been better than the 4Kids dub, but that's a low bar.
Well, yeah, but like as our friends Steve and Alex did our Patreon podcast, they watched through all the episodes of 4Kids, and they really detail,
bless
I
them.
think, just like intentional choices that they 4Kids thought would make the show more marketable, especially in like the first 20 episodes that they're stuck with, and then just they sort of stopped caring at a certain point, and it was just
They cared
Like,
too much at first, and then
if
they
they were-
stopped
if they-
caring.
I'm saying if they had been trying to make a better product, I think they might have been able to do it. But what they chose to do, just made it worse.
Right.
Yeah, bits of it just seem sloppy and almost bizarre with the scripting and direction of the actors.
We've said this before, and I'll say it again. I would kill to just talk to someone who was behind making those decisions, just to figure out what
Not
the hell.
necessarily the actors, but like the producers
No.
and
For sure.
the directors.
Yeah, because the actors were at the whim, I think, of the people making those
Mhm.
decisions. Yeah,
Seems like everyone from 4Kids is kind of into the wind now.
Well, some of
Yeah,
them
They
I
all
think
work at they all work at ad agencies in New York City, I'm sure.
or a bar, I think.
a
Is,
bar, yeah. A few of them have now made their way into the Funimation now Crunchyroll.
That's
dub,
true.
which is cool.
Yeah,
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa Ortiz, former Chopper, is now Sunny
And the-
Queen.
Yeah.
and the former Luffy was that character whose name I can't remember, who was
Yeah. I also
Weevil's
forgot who she played.
the Bobbity-ish person with Weevil.
Oh,
Miss
Bakken?
Bakken.
Bakken. Thank you.
Yeah, his
oh,
mother.
wait, Bobbin or Buckin?
Bakken.
Bakken.
Bucking,
Depends on your
something like that.
organization. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Buckin.
Bobbin
and
is on
Steven
Big Mom's
translation.
crew.
right, right. He's the boing guy.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. Let's talk about binge in One Piece in 2022.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to hear about that.
So it's funny because I thought I would be much more of an outlier, but there's some overlap here on this little journey. So I obviously I put 2022. So I read through about 1,000 chapters over the last 6 months, but One Piece, like you had mentioned earlier, Zach, has just kind of like been ever present. Whether you're watching it or not, it was always just kind of there. And I had caught some episodes of the 4Kids dub when I was younger, and I just remembered, I just ran into the other room and grabbed it. One of my first exposures to the manga was at a Scholastic book fair in 6th grade.
Wow.
They sold an issue of Shonen Jump, and it's an April 2007 issue. So just to give you context for what's going on in it, the Orochimaru just crashed the Chunin exams, and
Spoilers.
yeah, I know, right? And then I think they're on in One Piece. They're on Little Garden, so with the 2 giants.
Yeah, that
I think
makes
they're
sense.
on
Yeah.
that island, which is funny because I'll come back around to that. Because, like I said, I caught the 4Kids in like Toonami episodes here and there, and then like didn't really, I don't know why, it didn't really stick with me like Naruto and Bleach did. But come around to high school, and I'm reading manga more, and I'm basically reading week to week for Naruto and a couple other Shonen Jump manga, and I tried my hand at getting into One Piece, and it's funny because I got to just about the Little Garden part of Alabasta, before I just like cold turkey quit and like did not touch it again for years and years.
What did those giants ever do to you?
I really don't know. They weren't that bad of guys, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. And at that point, it just became such a daunting task. Just over the years, just telling myself like, oh, trying to catch up on One Piece at this point, and then a couple of years later, oh well, now how am I gonna? Ooh, and then cut to maybe April of this year, and I One Piece is just ever present on my like all my anime Twitter stuff. I'm always seeing stuff about it. The Wano anime is popping off, and it was right around when episode 1015 aired, and everyone's going hog wild about that episode and talking about it. And then manga readers are like, "Oh, Wano's coming to an end. Like, are we nearing like the final arc and stuff?" So,
to be fair, not to cut in too much, it was coming to an end for a very long time. So
yeah, that's very true. But and I mean, an end could be 5 years from now. We really don't know.
That's
true.
That's an ode to end.
Yeah. So I took it upon myself starting late April, early May. It was going to be my summer project to catch up on One Piece. So that's what I did. And about, I don't know, 5-6 months later, literally yesterday, I read the most recent chapter and am now caught up on the manga.
Amazing.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a little sprint to the finish line, but we made it here. So, yeah.
You deserve something. That's the thing is the later in time that it gets, the more I feel like someone catching up deserves something. Like, wow, how the hell did you do that? I only had to read 400 chapters.
There should be like an award ceremony every year for people who caught up to One Piece for the first
I
time.
agree.
Maybe more people would do it then.
Yeah,
We should probably set something up.
Yeah.
A lot of people did since the pandemic began.
That's true.
2020 was a big turning point, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the prize for me is that I will be here when it does eventually end, and that's kind of the whole inspiration behind it.
Yeah, that a couple comments on that. One, I also got a few of my early Shonen Jumps from Scholastic book fairs in middle school in 2003. And two, I think you've proven that 4Kids was right to skip Little Garden.
Oh, damn. He did. Yeah. Oh, no.
Turns out Brandon was behind that decision.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to talk to you about that.
They hired a 5-year-old to be the executive making decisions.
You know what?
Makes sense.
I know it's 4 kids, but a 5-year-old is above their pay grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would explain a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was all I needed to tell them to make me CEO.
It explains all the poo-poo jokes on the 4 Kids stuff.
Of course, Sanji had to have a lollies because I love lollies. Come on.
So yeah, as you mentioned, One Piece has been ever present. We've wanted to talk about it on the podcast for a while. I have anyway. Why are we talking about One Piece now? So it's always a good time to talk about One Piece. You guys have been podcasting about it for hours every week for 13 years. Plenty to talk about. So even though it's been, one of the biggest manga and anime franchise in the world in so many ways for the past decade and change, it seems like it just keeps getting exponentially bigger lately. So a few milestones. Last year was like the big year for milestones in terms of like numbers. So it hit chapter 1000 right at the beginning of the year. Hit volume 100.
2 years ago, right? 21?
Yeah.
1000 chapter 1?
2021. Yeah, I'm saying this was all in 2021. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry, go ahead. I forgot it's 2022. I'm very confused.
So at the beginning of 2021, it hit chapter 1000. Almost right at the end, in mid-November, it hit episode 1000 in the anime. So the year was kind of, bookended by the big 1000s, and it got volume 100 halfway through, a little more than halfway through, late summer, early fall. So, that was a big one for numbers, but I wrote down a list of like big One Piece things that happened just this summer. And those include the manga taking a month off, which is very rare. The Anime Expo promotion that was just on a level beyond anything I've seen for any property at an anime convention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same.
The One Piece card game launched. I actually just got my second promo pack of that from the Animations Film Festival. They were giving them out at Anime Expo as well. The One Piece podcast spent over 10 hours ranking every arc in the series. That happened.
For the second time. The second time.
The second time, that's
Second
true.
time, yeah.
This one took longer, but yes.
Yeah.
The manga hit its 25th anniversary, of course. We got volume 100 in English. The series set another Guinness World Record for reaching over 500 million copies published.
Oh, yeah.
One Piece Film Red was released in Japan and a few other regions, and it's been setting sales records in both the box office and like music and merchandise ever since. And well, we can talk about it a little bit, obviously spoiler free, but since it was announced and they started putting out merchandise, I've had friends who are not into One Piece at all, but are like Idol fans and like go to conventions for concerts and stuff, just buy up every piece of merchandise put out just because of Otto and Uta. And VTuber fans are super into it too. So the One Piece fan base is just ever expanding with everyone that it never had before.
I just wanted to mention the Times Square takeover they did 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
Times Square takeover.
Yeah.
Absolutely big.
I did want to. I want to give Idol fans their due because it's also worked the reverse way. I haven't even seen Red yet because it hasn't started playing here. But I'm totally into that soundtrack. Wow.
Yeah.
She is very good.
100%.
Yeah.
Amazing that her voice it has such a powerful voice, and she was only 19. I think she just turned 20.
Oh my
It's
god.
mind
You guys watch
blowing.
any of the VTuber concerts from the One Piece Day live streams
Yeah.
on the One Piece YouTube
Oh,
channel?
yeah.
That was pretty cool.
That was,
Yeah.
yeah. So, with that, there was also a little 2-episode tie-in arc for the anime, which, along with the film, it's making some bold amendments to the canon about what happened. The manga, as we mentioned, has had some of its biggest developments lately. The Wano arc ended after over 4 years. It does seem like, we're heading to some sort of endgame, which could mean another 5 or 10 years, since it's Oda and it's One Piece. The live-action series that we've been hearing about for over half a decade now has finished filming. There was that cross-promotion with college football, of all things, which was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I forgot about that already.
USC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonder if that got an influx of football fans.
Who knows?
I don't think it did.
Probably not.
It's streamed on YouTube, I believe.
Yeah.
I feel like that was more of a thing to have online than it was at the game. I don't think people cared as much as they should have.
Like, what kind of shapes are they making? I don't even know what it is.
What is this song?
That was fascinating. Someone published over 20,000 pages of the manga in a single book. There's
and then took credit as the author of that.
Yeah, very unofficial, but that went around. There's a major RPG for the series that's it was supposed to be released this year, but I think it's coming right at the beginning of next year now. I think that finally has the official release date. And yeah, like we mentioned, just in the past few weeks, we got Film Red taking over Times Square, having its US premiere in New York, and then it had its dub premiere out here in LA. A few of us got to see it there, and now it's getting its wide theatrical release in a few days now. So that's all just the past few months of big One Piece events. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and it's been hard, not having a bunch of people caught up on the podcast to talk about it with. So, yeah.
That's actually why we started our podcast, is because there was no one to talk about it. It's like we need an outlet for this.
Exactly. So, with 1,000 episodes, over 1,000 chapters, it's hard to imagine many properties that have that kind of, running time, that kind of length, where every one of those 1,000+ installments is absolutely essential. Like, I don't really understand how soap operas work. I know they're all like tens of thousands of episodes, but apparently you can just jump in wherever. One Piece doesn't really work that way. You gotta binge through 1,000+ chapters and/or episodes.
Yeah. The thing about soap operas is that they're all about a place or a town or a group of people, and the people can change. And there's always multiple stories going on at once, and one storyline will continue and one will wrap up. So I like pro wrestling that way, but there's no real overarching goal or narrative of a soap opera. So it makes sense that it would be like that.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah. And other stuff, there's stuff like Detective Conan that's gone on for over 1,000 episodes, but like you can watch any episode of Detective Conan. There's no overarching anything for the most part. So, even though it's so long, it requires so much to get into, it seems like it's just becoming bigger as it goes on. And it seems like, the storytelling is even becoming fresher and more original. So I guess this is a big question, but anyone can start. What do you think it is about One Piece that earns it this unprecedented level of longevity and success?
I would say it's consistency and its characters, I think. Sort of each character has a viewpoint, a goal, and a sort of a point of view. And Oda's writing was really consistent in that way, in that characters' decisions make sense, and you believe in sort of the same things that they believe in. You can see why they act. In Luffy in particular, I think the strength of the main character. I think main characters don't win popularity polls in every series. Frankly, not always in most series, but in One Piece does. And I think really Oda putting that heroic aspect into Luffy, even if he eschews being called a hero. I think that's really his sort of humble heroism, I think, and just his belief in right and wrong. That's always what I felt is at the heart of One Piece. And if you like that, I think you'll be hooked in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who's next, or
You can go ahead.
sorry.
In no order.
Yeah. So for me, I would add on to that. I think the world is a big thing that keeps people so engaged. I think we joke a lot on the show about the disparate sides of the fandom. I think this is true for any large fandom, which is One Piece certainly was not when we started and has become. Is you have people who are, quote unquote, power scalers. You have people who are, just into theorizing and figuring out what's the next big thing that's going to happen. You have people who are into shipping and what character, different characters or whatever. I sound like a very old person describing these things, which I am. But I think those things just demonstrate the longevity that the series has. We are headed toward a conclusion, and I think, as Bran put it, that conclusion, I think, has been the impetus for a lot of people recently to join on the adventure. When I was a fan of Lost, as we discussed before, the mystery and the world was we could talk about the ending. That's another thing.
You get the feeling that they changed the ending, or changed where they were going based on. But Oda's and One Piece sort of endpoint is, you feel like it's been the same from the beginning.
Yeah, but the hook. You just rewatched Lost recently. I haven't seen it since 2009. So Ed, maybe you could tell me. But the hook for me had always, beyond the characters and the story, certainly. But the thing that really kept me in was the mystery and the world, and figuring out, okay, how does this all fit together? And I think how all those things interact is what has made One Piece explode recently. I think it has always had the ignition, the gasoline behind it to really make a huge impact. And that's one of the reasons we started. We're like, why is this not more popular? And then you mentioned Anime Expo. I think they did the same thing at New York Comic Con with those huge Luffy balloons and the Thousand Sunny thing. And it was beyond anything we could have imagined ever 10 years ago, even. And I think it goes to show that the series has always had that kind of juice. Dressrosa we could talk about, but for the most part, has had that juice behind it. And I think, I'm very curious to see where it's going to go when we get to the end. And more importantly, I'm curious how the series is going to fare after the main story has concluded. I'm sure franchises don't die anymore, so I'm sure One Piece will be around in some shape or form after that. But I'm very curious how that'll work. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll end there.
And that Johnny and Yosaku spin-off series anytime now, right?
Yeah, well, Disney Plus, hopefully. Yeah.
All right, Skyler, go ahead.
Well, first, I concur with everything that you guys just said. And one thing I want to add on is, in One Piece never has a point where you can say it peaked here and then went downhill. Well, it feels like with every arc, Oda's trying to either do something he's never done before, or just straight up top himself. Or beat out whatever previous peak he'd had. And like, looking at the early stuff of Alabasta, it was like nothing that came before it. And most of the previous arcs are pretty self-contained, and on the shorter end. And none of them had that level of build-up for however many episodes. And then get to Skypiea, which is even more, or even longer and more going on than Enies Lobby, and so on. And like, Oda never kind of rests on his laurels. He wants to build on it. I mean, there's one comment he made on like the final arc, is apparently gonna make Marineford look like nothing, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, a big part of it. And is one, it never runs out of gas. Not every arc is A++ S tier or amazing, but most of them are. I mean, I'll even defend Dressrosa. That it's better or watched in larger chunks versus Red week to week.
Yeah, yes.
And other thing I wanted to mention is just how well Oda knows how to structure things.
Mm-hmm.
He front loads a lot of setup. I mean, Wano, for how much of the arc was build up to what's going on at Onigashima now. You get the sense he makes a plan, and it has all these high points he wants to get to. And then when you get to those, I can not really think of any series that hits those same high notes for me, that One Piece does at its best. Peaks of Enies Lobby, Marineford, and ending of Whole Cake Island. And nothing can, for me, can quite hit those highs. So I think that's a part of it. And also, weird to say, but just Oda's a really, really good storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think just to piggyback off of what's already been said, like directly what you just said about Oda, this man is the most prepared manga artist I've ever seen in a weekly publication, because like literally from chapter 1, he sets up the main goal of this entire shindig. It's like there's this vast treasure called the One Piece, and only the greatest pirate will ever reach it. So good luck. And from there, it's always been the goal at the end of the sea, the treasure at the end of the rainbow, and it's just about how we get there. And it's never been it never feels like you're asking yourself like, oh, when are we gonna get to Laugh Tale? When are we gonna like move forward and do this? It's just every time an arc completes and they celebrate and they're like, all right, where do we go next? You're like just as excited to find out like where the story takes them from there. And as we mentioned, the characters all have their own motivations and their reason to be setting to the seas, and you want to support all of them. It's so incredibly endearing and like bringing people together. And I feel like a big part of it, One Piece's long-standing success, is that it's just a story about humanity in so many different aspects. You go to different, like you go to Fishman Island, and it's about overcoming like racism, and it's overcoming slavery, and like all these different aspects of just bursting through these parts of humanity that bring everyone down. And like in Wano, with them being closed off from the rest of the world, it's about breaking free and being able to live the way you want to live. And that's kind of fully embodied in the protagonist. And Luffy is that the key to freedom for everyone he's come across. Like they're all shackled by something, some way of life, where they're shackled by either like a hierarchy or where they live, and he's there to tell them that like you don't have to stand for that. You can do whatever the hell you want, really. And I feel like that's just been a driving force to its success. And we've already said so much about how good of a writer Oda is, but this man literally will like drop the smallest detail and then like 200 or 300 chapters later be like, you remember this thing I briefly mentioned? Well, now it's important. And I think that's something that you don't see happen in almost any long-standing manga, where Alabasta happened about 800 chapters ago, and now it's becoming like extremely story relevant again. And it just feels like the world of One Piece is so concretely created because things aren't just left in the dust and like the page isn't blank when you turn back to it. It's all there and it's all interconnected, and everything that happens affects the entire world. The bounties, hit the news the next day after some big bad is defeated, and like the whole hierarchy of the government and the world and all the pirates change all the time, and you're just like always so excited to see how the power dynamics will keep shifting and how it'll affect all the characters. And for me, even just binging through it, which makes that journey a little less probably of like a sweet release because I just pounded through it, it's still just so satisfying to see everything moving forward the way it does. Just it's been such a captivating ride.
I feel like... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and now I'm going to have whiplash having to read it week to week. I don't know how that's going to go.
It's a learning curve.
Yeah. I think that's like super well said. I have a serious note, and the less serious note is that it kind of is like those, fast motion things. If you see a plant growing, and that's kind of how you're seeing the actual development, but we had been just like looking at a still plant every week for the last. But I think one of the really cool things about One Piece that I can't think any other series, I don't think any other series really has, that I mean, I'm sure there's something, but it's like a collection of fairy tales, but also it has this, as you said, is super interconnected. Everything is important to each other. So, a lot of people, I think, years ago were like, you could skip Skypiea, or you could skip this, or, if you don't like this arc, you could just move on to the next one. And I mean, the one good thing is, if you don't like an arc, that arc will end, and you will get a good arc at some point after that you enjoy. But that being said, everything is so interconnected and important that sometimes you could have a storyline that you didn't enjoy, and something comes up literally 2 decades later to rectify it and make it like, oh, wow, this is what was going on in the background 2 decades later. No one has that. There's no other author that has that ability, because no other series has run for 25 years that they can do that. And Oda is so good at being able to use One Piece's longevity to his advantage. And yeah.
The only one I can think of, the only other one I can think of would be maybe, and have that level of success would be George R.R. Martin. But that's been going since like 1994, I think. But certainly One Piece will be finished before he is.
Yes.
I don't know.
And
I don't know.
He said he's like 75% of the way done recently, I think.
George
Then
R.
there's one more-
R. Martin?
But then there's one more book after that.
Yeah,
I think.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
So we'll see.
yeah.
He said he literally refused to play Elden Ring because he has to finish this book.
But, of course, that's been running for however many years, but he can take 10, 15 years off in between books. Oda has been putting out new material every single week.
Exactly.
He also doesn't
Barely
produce
take a week
something.
off.
Yeah, he doesn't produce something every week.
Yeah. When did
he felt guilty about getting tonsillitis.
Right.
Yeah.
When-
Oh God.
when did Oda switch to the 3 weeks on, 1 week off schedule? Because that was like pretty recent thing, right? Within the last year.
Yeah. So Ed kind of hinted at it. What happened during Dressrosa, and you could kind of see it. We mentioned it. We call it squiggle vision because you could kind of see in Dressrosa, his art is a little messier. It gets better again, I think, later on. But yeah, that's when I think his editors are like, dude, you have to chill out. You are literally putting your health, I think, at risk.
Wasn't he in the hospital for a bit during Dressrosa?
Yeah, I think they said tonsillitis. I assume it was complications related to tonsillitis, but yeah.
The manga was going on break pretty frequently then, not like on the more or less consistent schedule now.
There's that, and also in 2009 and 2010, he was doing that. He helped write and produce and draw everything for Strong World that came out then. He also produced those extra chapters, and it was Marineford going on. So he's had like these bouts of just going way too hard. And I think those took a toll. And also, he's getting older, and he's in a position where he's like, okay, I can take more breaks now. Maybe he's like finally easing up on the
He was
accelerator.
22 when he started.
He was 17 when he first came up with the concept, maybe earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, he was 22 when the first regular chapter came out, and he is now. His birthday was January 1st.
January 1st. Yeah.
He'll be 47 this coming January, I think. 48 actually.
Yeah.
Which is young for a guy who's written a series for 25 plus
It's
years.
gonna be like Toriyama. He's gonna be in like semi-retirement for the next 25 years. After this.
He'll really enjoy that. He's gonna eat a lot of meat.
Yeah.
Then gonna sleep for like a year straight.
Yeah, it'll be like when
He's
you
gonna watch all the ASMR food tubers.
That's what he's been doing lately. It's like when you finally take a rest and realize how tired you are. That's what he's gonna be, I think.
Oof.
Yeah, there's that one anecdote when I remember hearing where Masashi Kishimoto went to visit him in the hospital and found Oda working in his hospital bed.
I do kind of remember that story. Yeah, yep. Kishimoto is much smarter in terms of, I should say, he's much smarter about his health, I guess, because he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to take a long break now. Although I think
they've always had
involved, but
they've always had a very warm relationship, like a peer relationship. And they've talked about it in interviews as well, as opposed to sort of the sort of idolization he has for Toriyama, which really comes through in that Color Walk 1 interview, where they're not. He really sees him as, it's the senpai kohai thing of, he's always going to be his senior, but I think he sees Kishimoto in the interviews that they've done more as an equal, and they have a very interesting, more informal chats when they do things like that. It's very interesting.
I mean, the fun fact with Kishimoto, sorry, I want to get it before I forget, is that Sanji's name was originally going to be Naruto because
I remember that.
Yeah, because it looks like the
Fish.
food.
Right.
Yeah, his eyebrow. But he, out of respect for Kishimoto, it's like Sanji.
But then he worked out for the best because it'd been Naruto, he wouldn't have been able to make puns with Sanji's brothers.
Exactly.
True.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he totally planned that from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, with Kishimoto, for a long time, One Piece and Naruto were kind of competing for the top spot in Jump.
In the U.S. especially, I think. Well, no, I should say in the U.S. it wasn't even close. Naruto.
Yeah, Naruto.
Yeah. What am I
But
saying?
Yeah, I think in Japan though, like Naruto was ahead for a long time. Then Enies Lobby happened.
Yeah.
Well, One Piece had its initial peak, really with Alabasta, and then that's around the time when that wrapped up. I think is when Naruto debuted in 2001, 2002, and really got going, really got popular. And then One Piece again had its popularity resurgence with Enies Lobby, and then again with Marineford and Strong World happening at the same time.
And
yeah,
I mean, I feel they're really kindred spirits. I mean, not just because Kishimoto put like the Straw Hat in the very final chapter of Naruto, and they had all these cross collaborations at the very end. It's just so weird that Shonen Jump continues for, when did it end? 2017. It's been like 5+ years since Naruto's ended, and One Piece is still there, and Naruto, I guess Boruto is, but. It's
how many other series even run for 15 years like Naruto did?
Yeah.
Hardly any.
It's just crazy.
How many
to think
Jump
about.
series last 5 years?
How many last 5 weeks?
5 years is great. Yeah, 5 weeks is not as great, but yeah.
Sorry, Red
And
Hood.
One Piece has been going on for about 25 years.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with everything all of you said. The one small bit I'll add, which hasn't been quite mentioned, but a lot of people have discussed it on your podcast, on just many other circles, is that, Oda basically just makes every series he could have ever imagined making and puts it all in One Piece. Every arc is a completely different genre. He can just make whatever universe he wants to make. So you get to, enjoy this incredible artist and his work in every bit of, imaginative creation that he could come up with. And it all gets bundled into this overarching plot. It all ties into each other. It's so interconnected and so cleverly mapped out. So I think that's another reason why, of course, One Piece is 1,000 chapters because it's, 10, 100 chapter series. That's really what it is. And then Oda is just so good at threading the needle between all of those to make them feel cohesive and like they exist in the same wacky universe.
Yeah, and it's amazing how great of a series it is in terms of its action and story, and also its comedy. It is a legitimately funny series, which is people forget, but it is.
In the middle of big war on Onigashima, there's Brachio Snakeus.
Yeah, oh god.
Or that
all the dinosaur
giraffe,
stuff.
The giraffe dude. It was like his
awesome.
The guy coming out of the chicken butt. Don't forget that.
Literally.
4 tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Oda just had all these ideas. Hey, this sounds like it'd be funny. Why not?
They're great pitches for the series, though. There's a guy coming out of a chicken butt in one panel. I haven't read Chainsaw Man yet, but I know there's a lot of those kind of pitches. Like, oh, this happens. There's a guy riding a shark. It's a good pitch.
It's funny you mention that because I think that it goes a long way to develop a power system in a specific way, and sometimes they can get overcomplicated with arbitrary numbers like the power levels in DBZ, or I don't know, like Nen. The way like Nen combines in Hunter x Hunter can get kind of confusing to keep track of. But the devil fruits, it's just the gum fruit makes you rubbery. This fruit gives you fire powers. This fruit does this or that. It's very simple and straightforward, and they'll say the name of the fruit, and you're like, I can get an idea of what this power is.
You say that, but then there's characters like Sugar. I guess if she gets knocked out, it's there's just some really weird powers that make no sense. But you are right generally. I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, for sure. It's just more so I think it allows for an infinite potential that doesn't get bogged down by, having to work with that power creep scale that so many manga just get bogged down by, and eventually you get Dragon Ball Super, which I have almost no desire to take part in because it's like, well, these aren't even characters anymore; they're just muscle.
Yep.
You know?
In One Piece battles, half the time it comes down to who's more clever with how they use their ability.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
and
not quite to the JoJo level, but yeah, it is. It is definitely that. Yeah.
In that spectrum.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like imagine any other series explaining this guy whose ability is to turn his body into mochi is actually really strong.
Yeah, and I think that's something interesting about specifically how Luffy develops his powers is that all of his gears don't feel just like an ass pull where it's like, oh, like he just took a fatal blow and now he just like transforms. I mean, it like, kind of happens that way to an extent, but there's usually some kind of logic to he's like, oh, I need to like keep up with my opponent. Let me make this gear 2 thing where I build up all the energy throughout the rubber and I go faster. Or like with the Snake and Bound Man, it was about like being able to like beat reading the future by being so fast and unpredictable. I think
I don't know if since you read it all in one shot, I wonder, but like at the time, Gear 2 doesn't happen until NES Lobby, which is it felt far into the series. I guess it's at the very beginning. But it's like I was super surprised when it happened because Oda had always held back on that kind of DBZ-ish power-up thing. Mm-hmm. Like Luffy just needed his wits and and needed to figure out how to beat the villain. And then he's like, okay, I actually need to figure out how to get stronger or use my ability in a new way. Was such a cool and when he takes a shonen trope that he hasn't used, it feels new and original because we haven't seen it in the series yet, and the series has been going on for so long. So like the tournament thing, in Dressrosa, when that finally happened, we're like, oh, there's finally a tournament arc, and so on.
Yeah, I guess like to also play devil's advocate to what I said, I feel like when they started explaining hockey, that was kind of like a catch-all for like, okay, you can have your devil fruit power, but then you need this to like overcome someone else's power. And that was like the next level of like, you need to be able to do this to keep up.
Yeah, I think we're coming to a new level of above that, probably in the story, it feels like, but yeah.
I mean, that's kind of been set from fairly early on, though. Like the characters who just rely on their power being inherently strong. I think it seems like Oda intentionally shows how that caps their potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they run into someone whose ability just happens to counter theirs, they got nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Skypiea.
That was actually one of my favorite parts. One, because it started in Skypiea with Luffy and the rubber thing, but just having watched episode 1017 or 1015, when Big Mom and Kaido both attack him, and she's like, "Why didn't my lightning work on you?" Because I'm made of rubber, and it's like, oh my god, it's still relevant. And then when Kaido attacks him, he's like, why didn't my attack work on you? He's like, because I got guts. And it's like, oh yeah, baby.
I love that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of Wano too. Yeah,
I remember that back at that was also one in Little Garden as well. Instinct.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's. I think one of the things that make the series compelling is that, as Ed said, the characters may evolve, but they're still themselves, through the whole series. Mm-hmm. Which again, I don't know, like if I had to write a character for 25 years, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I'm the same at all as I was 25 years ago. So,
I was.
That's
25
the
years
ideal
ago.
situation.
Yeah.
I was
10
25 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So this might have some overlap with the previous question, but what is it about One Piece that makes it so important to each of you?
Zach, you want to go first?
Thank you, Ed. No. If I don't want to, I've been talking a lot, I feel like, but I'm used to talking too much. Is the thing. Yeah. What does One Piece mean to me? I mean, all of my groomsmen, just about at my wedding were all from the podcast. I mean, the podcast and One Piece have made such an enormous impact of my life that I can't imagine what my life would look like without it. I don't know how to even put it into words. I think it's just, I mean, obviously, yeah, I don't really even know what else to say. It's just made a tremendous impact on my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the question was more like, other than what we just talked about, is there anything about the series in particular that really grabbed you and made such an impact? And
sorry, I answered the
for
wrong
13
question.
years?
That's also a good question, though. I think as I mentioned, the world building. I wrote an article back in 2015-16 all about like a deep dive into like the big storylines in One Piece, which have really been coming to a head, I think, recently in the story. That kind of stuff really hooks me in. I really look forward to seeing the end of the character arcs for all of these characters I deeply love, even the ones I deeply hate. We've lived, especially the group of us, have lived with these characters weekly for so long that it's, just seeing the journey to the end, I think, will be a very bittersweet moment when it comes. Yeah.
I guess the thing that's most impactful for me, I think, is seeing the way that Oda has grappled with applying real world evil and situations to a cartoon world, and really doing a good job of showing good and evil in mostly like pure good and pure evil, but also with nuance of we see it with what Rayleigh was talking about at Shibandi with Luffy doesn't want to go on an adventure if he knows what the end is going to be, and Rayleigh's talking about maybe you'll come to a different conclusion than we did once you see the truth. But so there's that nuance, but there's also that aspect of the government really is evil. They're killing people. They're firing lasers from the sky and destroying
Spoilers.
countries, and they're hiding the true history from people. People have a right to know these things. And, the government wants control over everyone, and Luffy is the embodiment of freedom. As that's become a very clear over the last, it's always been clear, but it's really highlighted at the end of Wano. And those the chapters with Emu, which have come up recently. So I don't know, I really like the consistent moral stance of the series, and in particular Luffy's character. His embracing of his embrace of freedom as his rallying cry, and his ability to make the case for himself through his actions and not necessarily through his words, by leading the way, by being a leader. And that's also part of why Zoro, I think, is my favorite character, because he can act as Luffy's conscience at times, and we saw it especially in Water 7, and then again a couple chapters ago, actually. But he's in a unique position, and I think that's why I've been attracted to that character so much. To just the way he has this relationship with Luffy, that sometimes he's the only person who can tell him things, and he'll listen because he trusts his judgment so much. So yeah, I just like the relationships between the characters and the sort of consistent moral stance of the characters really appeals to me.
On that point, like real world atrocities and evils that they apply in the story, I think that's interesting to bring up, especially for people who don't read or watch One Piece, because I feel like outside looking in, it's got a very cartoony and lighthearted aesthetic to it, and like I feel like people who haven't read One Piece are like, oh, it's probably just like a bunch of swashbuckling fun on the high seas, and then you start reading or watching it and you're like, oh, they're committing genocide. Oh, there's like all these like 1% rich people that own slaves and like all this stuff that you're like, wow, there's actually a lot of bad shit going on in this manga that they have to deal with and that they make light of.
We did a spin-off series that's in a very brief hiatus, hopefully, called Fight Together, where we discussed all the ties with various real world issues in the series, when they're done well, when they're not done well. And I think it is so uniquely done. And I think particularly poignant because it's always, or almost always, done with such a personal touch. Like when you're seeing, when history is being erased, you're seeing it from a little girl's point of view, and it's heartbreaking and almost makes me tear up thinking about. There are such emotionally resonant stories in the series. I think that is what really, I think, keeps people in. They're very relatably like awful stories. Like, oh, these things happen in the real world too. They're not just fiction. Yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Going off what and you said about an emotional connection, one of the big things for me is everything in One Piece is larger than life, including in those big emotional moments. I mean, Oda's pretty much famous for his ugly cry scenes now. And it's those where it's just hard on sleeve, if characters shouting how they feel. There's a reason that I Want to Live scene is still one of the best ever. There's best things. Oda has a gift for getting that emotional investment and then just going for a gut punch. I mean, everyone has their story about that time they cried watching or reading One Piece. I have a few of those. And the opposite end. And is really good at making those villains you really, really want to see get punched. And Orochi, Spandam.
Caesar Clan.
Celestial Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just these guys who were absolutely irredeemable. Well, can't stand them. And then he always delivers with the payoff in Celestial Dragon Punch. And one of my favorites is still the first fight against Bellamy and Jaya.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah. Seeing Luffy take that guy down on a peg and like denting his head into the ground. It felt good. And that's kind of where it comes back to. One Piece just feels good to watch and read. And you'll cry, but there's always something fun and uplifting in the end. Because you seem like Oda really likes to entertain and keep people all having fun. Have these big emotional moments, and then once that's done, then a silly gag off to the side. And just the way he balances that, it's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think as someone who doesn't have the longevity attachment to this like most of you do, I definitely don't have that personal investment that I can say is like what makes it so important to me. But I think looking at it from a broader perspective, the series is just a cultural monument at this point. And that's a big reason why I felt compelled to be a part of the culture, is that there's nothing else like it. And there are certain series that like run for years and years and they go on and on, but like a lot of those just become very niche, and like I don't think people stay connected to those things the way that people are connected to One Piece. And just being a part of it makes you just appreciate this massive cultural imprint that Oda has made on people across the world, and this series very much embodies so many types of people in the world. And I feel like it's just something that, I don't know, if you're a fan of anime and manga, I'm not saying you need to be, I'm not going to force anybody to read or watch it, but
like Ed did to me.
yeah, but it feels like you should be,
If I could just interject to say two things that I think people who have just caught up recently might enjoy but may not be aware of, that show One Piece's larger impact on the culture. These are just things from the last 2 years, really. Are the Hungry Days cup noodle commercials that came out in Japan.
Those are. I think they took those off YouTube, though.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can find them somewhere.
Yeah, those are better than they have any right to be.
Absolutely.
They are insanely good.
There was one other thing is the live action short stun for the anniversary that came out like a year ago, something like that. But it really shows One Piece's, or the perception of One Piece in the culture, and how the people who produce Shueisha, in particular Shueisha Toei, how they view One Piece's place in the media landscape of Japan, to the point where it's basically ubiquitous. Even to a point that Dragon Ball isn't so much anymore. It's still out there, but like just this ubiquitous cultural property. And Japan is prone to faddish interests in things. Things come and things go. Like, mixed martial arts was really big in the mid 2000s, and pro wrestling was really big in the late 90s as well. So some things come and go, and Demon Slayer is really big the last couple of years. But very few things tend, like, especially in the manga anime space, have that kind of staying power and cultural impact. And I think those two things are a good thing to look at to see, that's how One Piece is thought of in the culture.
I'll have to take a look at those live action bits. I've seen the cup noodle commercials; those are very good. But yeah,
I need to.
So I think
those.
that should all still be on the official One Piece YouTube channel.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you watched them since yesterday, Bram?
No.
There are so many Easter eggs for the entire series that I think you'd get a lot more out of it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll rewatch them. I mean, that's what, like a few minutes out of my day. So
basically,
yeah. You just read 1,000.
I think I was gonna say I think I can handle a little bit more One Piece.
Well, I'd say the other really great thing to catching up, and we tell people like our podcast is the thing you get when you get to the end of the to the end of the long hard road of reading through 1,000+ chapters of a series. But then you also get this. I mean, look, there are bad parts of the community too, but I think you get a really great community of people or friends. It doesn't have to be online, certainly. That you get to talk about this when it comes out every week, and that is just an experience in and of itself. It really becomes such a It really has the unique aspect where every week you're wondering what's going to happen next, or you're sharing a laugh over what happened in this chapter, or you're talking about what ridiculous outfit appeared in whatever chapter you just read. But yeah, there's so much to enjoy.
Oh man, I wish I had it on my computer. I gotta find it somewhere, but I just remembered I actually dressed up as Luffy for Halloween one year. I wore it to high school, and I just literally I wore like cut off jean shorts, like a red shirt, and I just printed out a picture of the Straw Hat logo and taped it to my back, and that was it.
I have a picture. My wife has not read One Piece, despite my asking. That's a whole other story. But she accidentally cosplayed as Luffy wearing a red vested shirt with cut off jeans, and I'm like, do you know you look exactly like the main character I talk about every single week in the other room? No, I don't know what you're talking about. He is a good entry level cosplay, I think, or also advanced level, depending on what you're doing with it. But yeah,
true. Just like
Tier 5
literally
cosplay.
tear a scar in your chest.
yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, you have to start by stabbing right under your eye.
Your eye.
Yeah.
No, please again. We don't.
Find
I
your
wanna speak
idol
for
and
Fandom
rip his
Post.
arm off.
No, he has to rip his own arm off. You have to convince him to.
True.
Spoilers for chapter 1.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
Now, to kind of segue from, these discussions about catching up and all the rewards for doing so, as the series continues to grow in success and acclaim, more and more people want to get into the series. And those of us who are already huge fans want nothing more than to bring in as many new fans as possible. But that unbelievable length that it has just seems like the most insurmountable barrier of entry that anyone could imagine. So, there are plenty of outliers. We've all talked to plenty of people who have binged through the entire series in a few months. Obviously, we have one such insane representative here. But
put the manga on my back like Odin. Let's go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just walk around the country with 100-something volumes of One Piece and pass them out to people.
I'm gonna get that all in one piece.
Oh God, don't do that.
Like, why didn't they wait until it was done at least? Anyway, how do you get a normal person into the series at this point, knowing that there's that much to get into?
There's one person qualified here to answer that question, I feel like.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm not a normal person when it comes to the amount of anime and manga I intake. So
yeah,
I feel like a bit of an outlier, and part of my reasoning stems from what we've talked about, like me feeling compelled by this grand story that's been going on so long and wanting to see it to its end when it happens in real time. But yeah, I don't know. It's almost like you can't really overstate it because, it's already such a monumental task to take on that people are already too afraid to do it. It's you almost just have to coerce them to watch a few episodes and be like, well, what do you think of this? Or like, I don't know. I really don't know how I would get someone who isn't already like a huge anime and manga fan into it. That's a bit of a steeper hill to climb.
I mean, my answer, I think I've been trying to get people to One Piece for a long time. I think the thing that is working the best right now is just the incredible anime episodes that have been produced. I think was mentioned here a few times. The new staff, we've had Henry Thurlow, who is an animator at Toei on the show a bunch of times, and just hearing just the amazing stuff that goes behind the scenes there too, is, I think, a testament to the One Piece anime has come a long way. That's what I'm trying to say. I think the Naruto anime,
5 years, it's come a long way.
And even less than that. I think the Naruto anime really helped people get into Naruto. I think the Bleach anime really helped people get into Bleach, and so on, and DBZ obviously. Which I will say, Naruto and Bleach in particular, I could speak to, since I have not gone through the entire Naruto canon, but the anime is significantly better, although filled with a lot more filler than the manga, in my opinion. And I think the stylishness of that really hooked people into becoming fans of that series. And I think when people hear like, wow, this is like one of the best animated things I've ever seen, it's so unique and different, and it's also it's Wano right now, so it's very actiony, which is getting people who are like the former DBZ or current DBZ fans into it, or current action movie fans. You know, like look, the biggest things in the world right now, anime is getting there. But you know, Marvel movies and all of that, you know, action is still kind of the king of what is big in the world, and I think the anime really finally does it justice, and then some. And I think that's probably the way to hook people in right now. It helped me. You showed me the Crocodile Luffy fight, the very end of it.
Yeah.
And that I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Look at that karaoke font.
See, but because I know you, and we're also classical music nerds. Both of us.
That also helps. So if you know the person you're targeting, there is also
you have to do research on your target.
So you're saying we just have to spam people with Sakaguboru links to get them into One Piece?
That's not what I do to my.
It depends the person. I'm talking about like a casual anime fan. I think that would really help, because when I see a series is really well animated, I am interested in watching that series immediately. If as long as the plot is like reasonable. Yeah. I obviously not for everyone. Some people only read manga. Some people only read comics. You know, I don't know.
I think
Zach, you should watch Dorohedoro. I'm just saying.
I know.
True.
And
there's a lot of things I need to watch, Ed. You have a very you probably I'm the outlier here. I'm the fake anime nerd here.
This season has you can roll the dice and pick from like 15 different shows and probably not have a bad time. So
I have so much on my backlog I need to watch. The problem is I have a kid, and for that, it's hard to read subtitles and give my full attention to something.
Here's a unique question. I guess when is the time when you think you're going to try to get your kid into One Piece?
So I was actually just talking about this recently. So actually last week on the show, I think. You take the first half of the series, like pre-time skip. I'd feel more comfortable showing it to him in he is 1 right now, so I'm really projecting it.
Media literacy not there.
Next week. His only anime knowledge is a Totoro plush. So maybe, I don't know, late preteens, early teens. But like the thing is, Oda has also become increasingly maybe sexually graphic. Is that the word I could use?
Horny.
Horny. That's probably better.
It's not really graphic. Yeah.
I mean, if he starts as a preteen, I mean, he gets right into that perfect teen age when he's like, this Sanji guy knows what's up.
you were thinking about it as a teenager, not a parent of a teenager. And I'm just I'm just on the cusp in the middle of that. So I'm like looking 12 years out and also looking, 15 years back or however far. So I'm okay. As a preteen,
although,
go ahead.
I'll say it's my nephew's 8th birthday last month, and I did
speak better to this.
Yeah, I gave him the first volume as a birthday gift. I don't expect he'll read it probably for a couple of years. It'll probably lie around his room for a while. I don't think I'm not sure if he's reading that much quite yet, but hopefully.
I think the beginning of the series, maybe some violence, or watch the 4Kids dub. No, I'm kidding. But
an 8-year-old boy does stab himself in the face in the first 5 pages.
But at the same time,
a guy gets shot in the head in the first chapter.
Yeah,
I feel like that hurt. Okay, I have to get back to me in like 10 years, and I'll have an answer for you.
A man is executed on page 1,
on panel 1. I think.
On panel 1, yeah.
Nice goofy pirate comic. Then one of those pirates pops a cap in a guy's ass.
Yeah. Like obviously we read stories and books as kids that involve violence and sex and all the things that
Anyway, my reasoning. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. All I was gonna say is, I don't think it's bad that they have those things. It's just how they're presented, which is a whole other discussion. I don't want my kid objectifying women, in the way that Sanji does a lot of the time. So at what point is he not completely impressionable that he will be copying a character? But I don't think that's also kind of like a myth, maybe. You see, I'm right in the middle because I'm also thinking back. I'm like, I didn't start turning into Goku all of a sudden.
You
I
didn't?
wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to.
I mean, also Sanji's perving usually ends with Nami smacking him in the face.
Yeah, which I could say that's going to be what happens to you if you do that.
Yeah.
Or you'll have a need a blood transfusion or something.
Yeah, it's easy. It's an easier decision when it's not your kid. Like,
Yes.
I know his mother took him to see the new Top Gun movie, so I think he's ready for
Yeah, here's the lesson. Give your friends' kids or your nephews and nieces, give them One Piece. Don't leave it up to the parent. So I have Steve and Ed and everyone else on the podcast. I'm sure will do that for me.
Nice.
First birthday's coming up.
Second birthday's coming.
Oh yeah, damn! It's been that.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy?
Wow.
He's walking now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man. I think one thing I could say that I think Kestrel mentioned earlier, how One Piece is able to jump from genre to genre, and it's got all these different stylistic changes throughout. I guess you can use that kind of as a linchpin, that One Piece is unique in that there's almost something for everyone. If you're into anime at all, like you said, action is king, and people are going to flock toward good animation. And like you said, by Wano, that is locked in, you're good. But to get there, you need to be like, oh, well, are you into, well, there's this whole like spooky thriller bark arc if you're into zombies and stuff, or like there's all this and that. It's just about taste making in a way, and doing what you can to get somebody at least in a foot in the door, a foot on the ship. That's all you really need.
I mean, the manga is definitely the foot you want to put in first. And then, I say this having caught up with the anime, I do think the manga is a much swifter and overall better ride. It's just such a tight, well done story generally. Thriller Bark, I'm thinking in particular, is so well drawn. I think that's like some of his peak art.
Yeah.
All right. How do you think the One Piece fan base differs from other manga and anime fan bases?
I'm not in many other.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it differs less as the more popular it gets.
Yes. I think it used to be very different. We were the outcasts, I think.
Well, I think because of its longevity, a lot of people who get into anime end up getting into One Piece, or they have opinions about One Piece. They've seen some One Piece. So I feel like, those numbers only go up at this point.
I just realized we're anime hipsters. We're like the people who are like, I was watching One Piece before.
I don't know what the kids like these days.
TikTok. They like TikTok.
Sure.
That's probably the way to get kids into One Piece nowadays, is to do like a minute-long TikTok where you just say, you use the automated lady voice. She's like, I just read 500 chapters of One Piece. These are my favorite panels. And
that's true. I mean, we have a whole new generation of people on our show. Like, it's really cool to just hear how cool anime has gotten. Since I think we're all kind of the same generation, at least. Anime was not cool when I was in high school or middle school. But it is. I think it is now, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you could say
every famous athlete loves anime. Right. That's because
in the Olympics, people were doing that's a big thing to show how crazy One Piece has gone. 2 Olympic winners did One Piece poses on the medal stand. I think that's insane. Yeah. It's like, I think the only thing I could think of that might be different between One Piece and other anime fandoms is, I think, how wide ranging it has become, which I think only like very, very few series hit that level. I think, there are a lot of series that have cult followings, which I think One Piece used to be. I think it's definitely pierced beyond that, to use a Gurren Lagann reference.
Row, fight the power.
Exactly, it has. It has. It's bigger than the galaxy now, or however big that thing got at the end of the series. Yeah.
I think in general, every fandom has its good and its bad, especially when it gets as big as something like almost any shonen fandom. If you go on Twitter and see what people are talking about, it gets pretty toxic, And I think I've been lucky that most of my exposure to One Piece online has been through artists creating original art for their favorite characters and people just sharing their thoughts on recent episodes and the animation. And so I've been lucky enough that I really haven't seen the toxic side of the fandom, but that is bound to change as now that I'm in the trenches with everyone else. But
You're welcome. I'll say generally, the mute button and the block button or whatever you're using on whatever social media or whatever really, I think, help curate that, because of course there are toxic parts of the fandom, but I almost never see them, and I am very, very connected. We have a lot of the fandom talking to us or emailing us or whatever it is. So it's doable. You could do it. I think you could have a good time. There's a very, very I have to say overall I've had a very positive experience with the fandom. Bad apples included, but I think there are many other fandoms for other shows that are percentage-wise probably much more toxic. Everyone's just trying to have a good time, I think, and I think a lot of people get most of the messages from the series, and the people who don't are not reading the same series that we are. I think.
Yeah, media literacy on the internet is pretty low.
I had no idea.
But if you have any level of it, it's kind of hard to be one of those nastier fans and like One Piece.
Yeah.
I mean, they manage. They figure it out.
If you have any level of media literacy.
Toxicity finds a way.
Yeah. Again, they exist, but I have blocked all of them, I think.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the way to go. Yeah.
I mean, at first you'll think about it for a day, and then you'll forget that person existed, which is good. Well, and hopefully they could improve on their own and learn some media literacy. But until then, I don't really need to be in that.
Well, like you said, you started the podcast because you needed anyone to talk about it with, and I think that's really what it comes down to is just find your circles and enjoy.
I mean, I think about that with any media. Anime in particular, I feel like the reason anime conventions are so big and anime clubs, and there's something about the anime and manga community where finding a community is so crucial. Toon Zone, for example,
Arlong Park forums.
Growing up, I think also just the fact that anime was so ostracized back in the day lent this it was a place for all the nerds to go and talk about their, I helped found an anime club at my high school. Ed, I know you were the president of the anime club in college.
Yep. As well.
Yeah. So obviously for us, we like making those communities around us, but I think with the internet, with the advent of social media as it exists today, it has definitely blown that up in a completely new way, to the fact that the communities we're building are, for lack of a better word, mainstream. I forgot where I'd started this sentence, but I'll stop it there.
Well, I think you're right in that just the avenues that fandoms communicate and congregate has changed so rapidly with social media and stuff. So, I mean, just a year or two ago, I became a Twitter mutual with someone about anime. I can't remember if it was Hunter x Hunter we were talking about or whatever. And I later come to find out 2 years later, I find some local friends, and me and this person in that friend group realize we are those Twitter mutuals from 2 years ago that were talking about anime together. And it's This could not have happened 10,
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
so surreal. So
I
different.
mean, this is a great example. Kestrel, apparently, we were like crossing paths like 15, 20 years ago, whenever that was.
Yeah.
No, it's nuts.
Now that I think about it, I think Kestrel, I think you and me are Facebook friends, which is weird because I haven't used Facebook in like 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's true.
What's Ed been up to? I got rid of my Facebook a long time.
Yeah, like I kind of had the One Piece wiki for that for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Dropped off after a bit,
Mhm.
but for a few years I was a regular.
That's a brave place to be too.
Yeah, that was a good introduction to some of the more unpleasant sides of the fandom.
Yeah.
So when is the One Piece podcast going to make their own wiki like Kanzenshu is?
We try to. It's a lot of work. I don't really have that skill set.
Zach writes for a living.
Yeah, I am. We've also, not to get too into the weeds, but we used to produce a lot more on our website, but just finding the talent and trying to find someone to hire to even redo that is a mammoth task.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that's happening anytime in the near or far future.
That was a 99% joke, but throw it out.
And I answered.
We've tried it. We've tried
did
it like
try
2,
it.
3 times.
We did.
Like
We had forums for a period of time. Discord has been, I think, a real blessing. I think it has really brought the community to, just speaking of new forms of social media, has really brought the community together in a new way.
bringing forum culture back.
Yeah, it really has, I think.
I missed it.
Me too.
Me
And
too.
IRC and all those other ridiculous things.
Yeah, I love forums.
Remember getting my first invite to LiveJournal back in 1999.
Or Zanga or GeoCities.
Something like that, yeah.
What was the other one? Angel Fire?
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
naming things.
Wow.
Now, Skyler, I think you had wanted to ask some questions about Film Red back before any of us thought we were going to be seeing it anytime soon. Now only you and I have watched it, so it might not be the best time to ask. Timing didn't work out quite well enough because
Yeah.
sees it in a few days. So is there anything vague that you wanted to talk about there, or just move on?
Well, I mean, what do you guys think about Film Red's explosion? And I've been following the numbers, and it's currently the 9th highest grossing movie in Japan's history. They
Period?
beat out, yeah, counting foreign movies.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Let me find the numbers. Here, it
That was that reminds me of because the first time that One Piece's popularity, really peaked was while we were doing the podcast was during Strong World.
Strong World.
I think that was a big surge,
And Marineford was
and-
going on. Yeah.
and ended up being super successful. So I really think that really sort of that fuels the longevity of the property and keeps it in sort of the cultural marketplace there.
I think
Especially when things succeed like that. And I think the fact that they've been able to mix a One Piece movie with this idol culture and this VTuber
Yeah.
stuff
Yep.
I think it's just riding a wave of what's popular. I think in
And
Japan
Shanks.
right now, which is-
Shanks is always popular.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
despite having been in 10 non-flashback chapters.
I know.
Right.
Don't get me started.
I love the memes that are just Shanks shows up, says something mysterious, leaves for 500 chapters, shows up,
Yes.
stops a war, says, "All right, see ya," leaves for 500 chapters.
we have a guest who's been on the last few times, Rustage, who's a rapper and producer, and he's making a Shanks song, and I'm just I was thinking to myself, what could you talk about? He's only been in 5, but from what I've heard, it's very good. But I was just he isn't in it that much, but he's very popular. Everyone likes Shanks.
Yeah. I mean, it goes a long way when you're hot. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's that
and
first
missing an
chapter.
arm.
In just that first chapter, one of his crew casually shoots a dude.
Yeah.
He says, "We're pirates. What'd you expect?
It's
How do you not
That-
like that guy?"
it is a very good Lucky Roo.
Mhm. Or I mean,
it
Shanks,
is-
his crew in general.
Oh yeah. It's a very impactful first chapter for a series too. Yeah, but when it comes to Red, I'm actually pretty flabbergasted that it has reached this level of popularity. I kind of thought, Strong World and Zed did really well at the time. Like I remember lines down the street, people lining up to see it, especially post 2020. I wasn't expecting to see a One Piece movie kind of beat that, insanity. And Gold they like really tried to promote as well, and it didn't really hit like Red or even like Zed.
Yeah.
So
Like,
I'm
Zed
yeah.
was the next highest, I think, and Red beat out its gross in like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm very pleasantly surprised, but very surprised. I maybe it's the anime. Maybe it's Wano. I don't know, and maybe it's just idol fans.
Yeah.
I've learned BTS fans are not to be messed with in the least. So
No, do not mess with Army.
do not mess with
You will
that.
not
Yeah.
win.
Exactly.
K-pop fans are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Apparently J-pop fans too, or whatever genre I guess idol falls in. This is not my
J-pop,
world. Yeah.
Same.
I think, at least speaking for North American audiences, I think there's just in the last, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a much stronger push in getting anime films in the theaters that I think has helped a lot. Because, we have, when Dragon Ball started coming to the theaters with, like, Broly, especially more recently, and now we have like Demon Slayer in the theaters and stuff. I think the effort by people like G Kids and Fathom
Yeah.
Events and all these film places, they're just making it more readily available than it's ever been. Similar to how like anime became so big because you can stream it now, and you're not like going to a Fandom on like a sketchy website and it's
bootleg VHS in a back of a store somewhere.
Or a sketchy fan sub that's half coherent.
Yeah. Like I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to see a Masaki Yuasa film in theaters in North America. And like that's a thing now. So
I mean I'd even
shift.
I agree with that. And for the recent Dragon Ball movie, didn't it get number 1 in the domestic in the US box office? I think just the wide releases, I think these series have always had the potential to really blow up, particularly with the movies. I think for the first time, companies like formerly Funimation, Crunchyroll, they're really putting their money where their mouth is now, and they're actually giving these series a real shot that I think they've deserved for a very long time, and it's amazing to see it actually paying off. I look forward to the American run for Red, and hopefully it'll do well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think might be also some that the Japanese companies are looking harder at foreign audiences.
True.
Like with how hard Toei has been in promoting Film Red since it came out.
True, yeah.
There's the Times Square thing, all the promotion in the Anime Expo. They had a separate booth for it in the exhibit hall.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Dragon Ball movie is going to shift Toei's thinking even further, given its success. I'm very curious to see where things go in the next few years.
I mean, money at the end of the day will make things happen,
I had no idea.
Newsflash.
I'll say, without spoiling anything, Film Red feels like the kind of movie that could explode. That kind of real crowd pleaser.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. I look forward to seeing it still. Yeah.
The rest of my questions are specifically about the One Piece podcast for the two of you. So the first one we've talked about a bit, but since you guys started in 2009, One Piece has certainly exploded in popularity worldwide, even more dramatically in the US than it did in Japan. So what changes have you observed in the profile of the series in that time? And what do you attribute some of the most significant growths to? And you've touched on a lot of this already, so if there's just anything else to add to that.
I mean, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Right. That's a short answer.
Yeah.
Is it the fandom looks absolutely nothing like it did even 5 years ago. Yeah. Ed, I don't know if you have.
I don't know. I think every time, like, the movie is getting such wide berth. I think in the theaters is it's going to be going forward really big. I think coming off of Red, especially in this country. I think Oda's further involvement in the films is probably one of the best investments he's made in the popularity of the series over the last, well, since we started the podcast, really. I mean, that's really when it started.
Yeah.
That year.
Yeah, and that really
like they were doing those compilation movies. Like,
yeah.
Oh God, yeah. The movies.
not like,
I mean, there were some good movies before he stepped in. There was 6 and 9, and
but they were in the doldrums at that point because they were doing. I mean, movie 9 was interesting, but it wasn't like
no, it's a recap movie. Yeah,
exactly, with some weird parts in it. And movie 8 was even worse. So
yeah, that sounds awesome.
It really rejuvenated a part of the property or part of the series that had gone that had gone down a little bit.
A part of it is they were producing a new movie every single year. Like, what are they doing? Yeah. Oda's like, slow down. Only going to do one every 3 years, and it makes it more special too. That when it does come out, it is this special event.
Yeah, and most of those movies never even got a U.S. release.
Yeah.
No, and I'm very, very, very annoyed about that because I've been waiting to watch some of those.
I remember
in
2007, 2008, when that came out. I went to an event when I was living in Washington that the Japanese embassy, they have a Japanese cultural center in DC, and they screened movie 8.
What?
Like once the Funimation dub came out, they had like Japanese movie nights at I think it's near the embassy, but. Yeah, it's just it was just sort of a Washington, Japanese embassy thing to do. It was interesting. It was more like being in like a college auditorium with like a screen. But
I mean, that's kind of Sorry.
I want to make a bit of a sidebar since we're talking about the films. As someone who only really stuck to the source material to get caught up. What movies would you say are watching out of all the One Piece films?
I would definitely watch movie 1. I love the way that it's animated, and it really embraces the spirit of early One Piece and the early One Piece anime. That
has completely different voice actors. It was production IG, right?
No, not the OVA. That's the OVA.
That's the OVA. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, One Piece the movie. That first movie is very. It's very impressive, and obviously movie 6 with Mamoru Hosoda is very good as well.
It's very different, but it's very good.
I've seen clips from that. It looks very different, but it looks like the style kind of will fit One Piece.
Well, what I would say is in Japan, they really didn't. I think Toei really did not like that movie because it was not a very One Piece-y movie. That being said, it is a fantastic movie. I really love that movie. It's a beautiful looking movie. Because of course it's Hosoda. I think Strong World is the most Oda anything that the anime has produced. It is so Oda in all his good and bad quirks. It's worth a watch for that reason. I love the hell out of Zed. I think I've seen people with different opinions as well, but that movie makes me cry. Old men crying makes me cry.
I would recommend watching the dub of Film Gold if you haven't been watching much of the dub.
Okay.
I think Keith Silverstein does a great job as the villain Gil Tesoro in that one.
The music is the best music in the series in Gold. That's for sure. Yeah.
And they adapt the songs, I think, in that. The opening number, at least.
Stampede. Stampede. If you just like no story and just action with every single character. But otherwise, it's fan service. The movie, but not fan service in that way. Fan service in the here you go. Here's everything you wanted to see.
Way.
Yeah, in the Marvel way. Exactly. That is Stampede is a Marvel One Piece
Stampede
movie.
is like an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. If you're into that, cool. If you're not, also fine.
Okay.
Desolate battlefields and CG.
Yeah, I don't know. That movie I have very split opinions on.
It's fun.
It is fun. It is entertaining, but I like the end, but that's it.
All right. Next question. So the One Piece podcast will almost certainly hit 1,000 episodes before the series is over. Even before
This is
that,
the first I'm hearing about this.
I mean, you really think he's going to wrap it up that quickly? Because you guys,
No,
do episodes on
I'm more talking about us.
You don't think you're already
Yeah.
3/4 of the way there?
Yeah, at this point we might as well.
Yeah. So you're 3/4 of the way there. And each of your episodes runs several hours, and each episode of One Piece is only 24 minutes, and the manga takes a lot less than that to read a chapter. And then you have your spin-off series that don't even factor into your episode count. So despite starting 12 years into the run of One Piece, there's already significantly more One Piece podcast content in terms of running time than if you combine all of the One Piece manga, anime, films, and everything. How does that feel?
Wow.
Dropping bombs.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is just I feel like I've been called out.
Intervention.
We need to stop talking.
Moment.
We need to stop.
Can't stop talking.
No.
Yeah, but I just love talking to these guys so much.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what to say other than woo. That's great, I guess. We got that. No, I'm very. I never thought we would still be doing this in the year 2022. If you had asked me, well, maybe a little bit of me would hope, but I did not imagine.
Yep. Podcasting was not quite the game it is today. Back then.
No.
It's been fascinating to watch something like that from scratch.
Now, I think it's fair to say that your podcast is the most successful fan podcast dedicated to a single manga or anime. How do you think you've managed to rise above the rest and achieve that level of success?
I want the stats on that. Can you send that to me?
I mean, it feels that way anyway.
I really have no idea. The thing about podcasting, and I'm sure you guys could attest, is there's no real good way to get a idea of how many people are listening, especially comparative to other, shows. Like, I have no idea how we're really doing. That being said, I've said this before in other shows too, but my recommendation to people, if you want to make a successful podcast, is to find something that has no other podcast. It's niche, which One Piece was at the time, and just have a consistent release schedule. Just release every week, every month, whatever, every day, whatever the hell you're able to do and commit to.
Plan ahead to make sure that you can do that.
And I think that's helped because when you could rely on something happening every week, I think One Piece is actually a good example. You're bound to build up an audience, whether or not whether you're a hit manga series or talking about a hit manga series.
Yeah. All right. What have been your proudest moments doing the podcast?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the Japan trip,
my proudest moment was the anime fans give back to Japan.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
that was 11 years ago now.
Yeah, that was my first exposure to you guys actually, because I watched that before ever listening to the podcast.
Oh wow, yeah, God, it feels like a very distant, drug-induced memory at this point because I was also up for 24 hours. Still, the only time I have taken a 5-hour energy drink and I thought I was going to die. That part I didn't like.
They call it 5-hour energy because that's how long you live after you drink it.
Yeah. I wish I was told that before.
Zach can handle anything harder than a black tea.
No, I really can't. I'm drinking that right now.
Could you explain that event a bit? I don't know exactly.
Yeah, so right after the tsunami, this is way before streaming was like a real thing, right? I like 2011.
Live
I don't
streams,
think
No,
Yeah.
I don't think Twitch was the thing yet.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Twitch was
just
absolutely
TV,
not a thing.
Not even.
God, it would have been great to have the technology that exists today and do that. We could have done something really awesome and and still have it available for people to watch. We did
Still
two of
raised,
these,
like
$40,000 at the end of
40,000.
yeah, over two
Wow.
events. We did 20 something thousand the first one and 10, 15 something.
Actually, it was like 2.5 events because we did another one a few weeks later.
Oh, we did. I don't even remember. It's all.
I think there was a lot of people who wanted to be on, so I think we did a second one like shortly after the first one, briefly.
Yeah.
Not a 24-hour stream, but like 7-8 hours, I think.
I'm proud. Oh God, there's a lot I'm proud of. We did a documentary. I did one with Greg in Japan. We interviewed Oda's homeroom teacher. We saw his high school and middle school. We spoke to an animator.
You went to the Barate, the real Barate.
I went to the inspiration. He says of Sanji, but it's actually Zeph. I'm almost positive that person was Zeph and not Sanji. And we went and oh God, that's available on our Patreon. It's just $1 to watch that. We have we took another trip to Japan recently with the whole crew. That was amazing.
Like 4 years ago.
God, that was 4 years ago. I'll throw something at you, Ed. No way.
Like May
2019. I thought 2019. It was 2019.
2019, 3 years.
Yeah, that was our 10th anniversary.
We got to interview some of the editors.
Yeah, of the series.
That was probably the most complicated production we've ever been a part of.
Yeah, that still needs to get released. It's still relevant. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. It's crazy the amount of stuff we've done when you condense it into a couple sentences.
Yeah.
The most fun thing we did, like the first day we were in Tokyo for that trip, we went to the Tokyo One Piece Tower, which is unfortunately closed now. But it was just so immersive to be like in an indoor theme park of just One Piece stuff.
That
like
whole
4
thing,
floors of One Piece.
That trip
was
was
insane.
100% amazing. The only thing I would change is more of it. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
All right. And the last question, now that One Piece has become such a big part of your life, do you think you'll be ready for a world where One Piece is no longer running, however far out that might be?
Ed?
Oh, well, I don't know. I feel like it'll always be there to revisit, you know.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
It's
think
like Dragon Ball went through a period of,
Right.
Especially in like the mid 2000s in Japan, except for the video games, there wasn't a lot being released, and I think like the Battle of Gods movie really brought that back. So that has more of a presence now than it did like 10 years ago. So or like 15 years ago now, but keeping One Piece in the forefront of people's the forefront of people's mind, I think, is sort of keeping it keeping it going forward in the culture.
Yeah, it'll always be there. I've said, and I think, when I'm in my 40s, I don't know how much I guess I'm gonna be doing some of the One Piece podcast in my 40s because I don't think it's ending in 5 years, but maybe.
I'd
But
say
like
4 or 5 years minimum.
I think once the manga ends, it'll be a very different landscape for One Piece. I don't know what that will look like, but I'm okay with stepping away from it one day. I think our co-host Steve has put it like, there's nothing that's going to be like this ever again. For us, certainly.
And we've talked about that before as well. Nothing's going to be like this for Oda ever again either.
No,
like he's created his life's work, and I think he's okay with that.
Yeah, I think the podcast is, if not my life's work, certainly one of them, and I'm also okay with that. I obviously would want to continue it in some vein as long as One Piece is a thing, but I don't know. I haven't thought about it because it is probably further off than they say it is.
Yeah, I think by 30 years in, Oda will deserve a nice long break.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
So will we. Since we apparently produce more content. It's so much
Time-wise,
It's so
anyway.
much harder to talk for 2 hours than to draw a comic every week.
Of course. All right, now we end every episode with recommendations, so we might as well keep this episode consistent and make One Piece recommendations. So obviously, everyone should read the manga on Viz's Shonen Jump service, Manga Plus, or physical volumes of the manga. Everyone should watch the anime on Crunchyroll and on home video or official digital distribution. And everyone should go see Film Red in theaters and buy their tickets on Fandango, if possible. But does anyone have any recommendations for anything One Piece related beyond just the main content?
Subscribe to the One Piece YouTube channel. The official One Piece YouTube channel. Go check out those One Piece Day live streams. They have the original OVA, the pre 99 OVA with the different voice cast and the production IG animation on there. So I would check that out. Just they have lots of good stuff on that YouTube channel.
My recommendation would be the Color Walk Compendiums. That's like the thing I recommend. I think you could enjoy it even if you haven't read the series, but certainly if you have. They're easy to collect, they're beautiful, and yeah, that's it.
I just got Compendium 2, and that thing is so nice looking.
Yeah, it's great.
Coffee table piece.
Mm-hmm.
My avatar is from that book.
Oh, nice.
And for me, we already touched on it. But I'll address that. I'll recommend the movies.
Mhm.
In the other One Piece films, Strong World, Zed, and in Gold, and Stampede also. Oh, they're all good movies. All of them I'd recommend if you like One Piece, which you should.
Yeah.
Nice. And not to be a complete shill, but now that I am caught up, I think I might check out this One Piece podcast I've heard so much
I
about.
don't recommend it. I don't know who told you about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's why we brought him on this episode.
It really it scares me that people listen to that.
Listen to the Arcs of Consequence.
Yeah,
That
actually,
was,
that's a good
big ranking episode from earlier this year.
Yeah, it's a fun discussion of the whole series, and since you just read the whole series, that might be a fun one. It's
More of a mini series.
yeah, it's not from that far back. It's 10 hours, so that'll give you a lot of time to listen. So get started.
Nice.
We'll expect your report on it after.
Yes.
All right. Well, you can find Fandom Post Radio anywhere that you find podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Alexa, and FandomPost.com. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Fandom Post Radio. Follow us, share our posts, get in contact with us. You can also get in contact with us via email at fandompostradio@gmail.com. And you can find me on Twitter at FullMetalKioma. Skyler, where can they find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at VideoGameP3. You can find more of my writing on the Fandom Post, on Crunchyroll features, and when I finally remember to update, on a piece of anime.com. I'm always around on Twitter, so hit me up if you want to chat.
How about you, Brian?
You can find me at Hellshake Brando on most socials. I also am writing weekly for the Fandom Post, reviewing Mashal, and then I'm also reviewing a couple other physical volumes and Blu-rays of stuff. So keep your eyes posted for that. I just actually put up a interview with Shu Sakuratani, the mangaka for Rooster Fighter. So please check that out and look forward to more stuff on Fandom Post.
Yeah, I guess I should mention I'm putting together an article about the Animationist Film Festival, so that'll be up next week. And I have a few interviews in there. And also I'm reviewing Chainsaw Man every week, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And you can also catch my review of Film Red at fandompost.com.
That's right.
Nice.
Some spoilers, but I mark them.
Yes. Zach and Ed, where can they find each of you and the One Piece podcast?
Ed, you don't have to do the whole thing.
You want to go first? All right, I'll go. All right. Yeah. I'm Edward E. One Piece on Twitter. I also have a second channel called Weeb Trailers. Twitter.com/Weeb Trailers. I take old anime trailers from DVDs from the 90s, 2000s, and up to today, and just post them for everyone to see because some of them are pretty interesting.
You could find me at Zach_Logan. My secondary account is the One Piece Podcast. That's at One Piece Podcast. Kestrel, I'm super impressed by the amount of very deep One Piece Podcast references that you've made. I feel bad that those are in your head now, but I appreciate you listening.
I literally forget the real name of Queen Orc of Vacusuck every time.
Yeah, you know what? Wait, what's her name? It's wait, I could get this. It's Queen.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, that I like really had to dig through my brain for that.
But my canon
best thing is you don't have to actually remember it because if you remember our version, you've already said it.
Right.
Yes, that's true. But I mean, I'll say surreal that people listen to the show generally because when you're in a podcast, I'm sure all you relate, you're kind of talking into the void. You know, you're talking with each other. You know, you're having a conversation, you're recording it, and you're publishing it, and maybe some people interact with you after. So it's always cool hearing people who somehow know the excited and ready thing or whatever it might be. Yeah, check us out every week. We do a podcast, onepiecepodcast.com and anywhere you get your show. We have, I'll say our series, Ed mentioned it, Forced to Watch 4Kids just wrapped. Highly recommend that. That's on our Patreon. We're also doing a tabletop role-playing game with our editor, Dan. That's been a lot of fun. It's my first foray into that world. So it's been an interesting and fun adventure. So you could check that out as well. That's free. And we're also doing a live action anime podcast related to the One Piece live action, but our contributor Sam and Jill are watching live action anime inspired movies and talking about them. They did such amazing films as Dragon Ball Evolution, Avatar, but they also did good ones like Speed Racer and
Ooh, that's a good one.
Pacific Rim and Scott Pilgrim. They did recently. Yeah, it's worth a listen. It's called Reel It In, but it's spelt the funny way, REAL. Sorry, that was a lot of plugs.
No, it's good. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm sorry this ended up being a One Piece podcast length podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That's my fault.
No, it's good. Great content. Thanks to everyone who listened. Everyone go watch One Piece, listen to One Piece podcast, keep listening here. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.